This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to The Express. I am indeed Gary Allen. We've got a great show for you tonight, but before we go too far with this, my guest, Astrid, is on the line. But before we get to you, Astrid, and I have a wonderful introduction for you, we want to warn everyone that if for some reason you lose us tonight, and EW, my producer and executive director of this whole operation, is on the other end, they're having tornado warnings in the San Antonio area, which is where all these feeds go through. So if for some reason tonight, and Astrid, I know you're listening, if we lose you at some point during the show or our listeners lose us, we will definitely try to get everything back in order and see how it goes. So far, so good. So we're just going to kind of go with that. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to The Express. Gary Allen with you. I thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us. Randy, I know, is in the chat room, and I thank you so very, very much for that. For those of you that are interested in following me, you can go on Facebook to Gary Allen. You can also go on and listen to any of my past shows. Like tonight will be up in about a week on YouTube. That's youtube.com. Gary Allen, The Express Interviews. You can also catch me on progressivevoices.com, which is a new outlet for all my stuff. Thursday nights, the show will repeat on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com. That's diversitybroadcastnetwork.com. That's our sister station. But before I go too far, let me introduce my guest for you today, this evening. Her name is Astrid Stromberg. She is the author of What's Next? Exploring the Journey of Souls in the Afterlife. She is celebrated as a gifted international inspirational and motivational speaker, born of psychic medium. Her advice is sought by famous people from all walks of life to channel messages from beyond for their personal and professional success. She has traveled to learn more about faith and their practices. She is, her gifts include holistic healer, certified clinical hypnotherapist, ordained minister, teacher, artist, and astrologer. And we have her tonight, and hopefully with all the travels that she's done to get the right answers, she'll be able to impart some of those upon us. And I am very lucky to have her, and I'm so lucky to call her friend, Miss Astrid Stromberg. Astrid, welcome to The Express.
Hello, Gary. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you tonight.
Yes, I am happy too. And like I said, if anything should happen during the program, don't worry. We'll just have you back at another time. But you know how tornadoes can be. They can knock out your power and everything right away. And
I'm praying for everybody to be safe and sound tonight and let the winds just blow us by.
Well, that's what I've been saying about Donald Trump for about 6 months now, but he just keeps hanging around. Astrid, let's get right to it. For those who didn't hear Astrid, who was with us about 6 months ago, we're going to start off with a little bit of the questions that we had before, and we're going to move into some new areas tonight, mostly about her readings and stuff. Astrid, you were very young when you discovered you had some of these wonderful talents.
Yes,
when you first got and realized you had the different psychic talents and abilities, and you were able to speak to spirits, etc., did that sort of put you off a little bit? Did you take a step back and go, "Whoa, what's going on here? Am I freaking out? Am I having a nervous breakdown? What's going on?" I mean, what went through your mind when you realized, oh wow, I can do things that other people can't?
Yeah, what really happened was, oh, wow, they don't understand. They don't do what I do. Like, I thought everybody was like me, It's like it was inverted. I thought everybody was hearing and seeing and sensing and feeling. And the oh, wow moment was like, am I the only one to see this? Am I the only one to hear this?
Yeah.
And when I got and that was very early on. That's as a kid, As a kid, you're like, well, why aren't other people like me? You don't really think, am I different? You're more observing other people and how they are. But growing up, yeah, and then it got twisted, and then I was like, oh my gosh, am I really the freak? Am I really, am I hallucinating? Am I imagining? What is imagination? How does the mind work? This is where, consciously speaking, as you grow up, you become like more more interested in new facts and how the human being really works and functions, and I was really curious as to, well, how is it that certain people get it and others don't? So it was really the other way around for me. And of course there was peer pressure and my family, and I was told I was too hypersensitive. I was making films in my head but I saw my grandmother pass. I saw people pass. They just came to me. I saw them, and I would hear them. And I remember one of the stories that I really talk about is one day I was young, and I was with my grandmother, and when you're young, grandmas are old, and she's speaking to herself, and we're alone in the house, and I just woke up from a nap. And I go in the kitchen because I'm hungry, and there's my grandma talking to the walls, basically. And I understand that she's talking to people on the other side, but again, my family said, "Oh, she's old and she's blabbering to herself," and you get misconceptions about people getting old.
Right.
It's like But no, it's totally normal.
Yeah. Do we all have a capacity to, at least to some degree or another, not maybe as keen or as acute as your abilities are concerned, but do we all? I bring this up because every once in a while in my dreams, and I think dreams are important. Sometimes they mean nothing, but many times they're messages. I dream of my mother and father every once in a while. Now, I never see their face. I just see their body, and I know it's them or another relative or somebody who has gone to the other side. Do we all have sort of an ability to communicate with people on the other side, as your book is talking about the afterlife, or is that really just a special gift that people such as yourself have, and all we can do is just basically have a dream every now and then?
Yeah, I think that everybody has the capacity, and the best way to validate that is to follow children. Children have that since birth. They see things, they hear things, and if they're only allowed to express themselves and to share their experiences, we would notice that is a part of who we are. It's ingrained in us. It's like the elephant that knows how to go to mate thousands and thousands of miles, without seeing, without hearing, but just having that intuitive insight that those elephants follow to mate.
Right.
I do believe that we have that. The reason why we call it a gift is that it becomes a purpose in life. I do astrology, and I see patterns in charts where people are to be more dedicated and more gifted, quote unquote, in certain areas. And in my chart, it's obvious that it's psychic, mediumship, intuitive,
Right.
channeling, all that stuff. That's in my purpose to be.
Right.
That's my that's kind of like a blueprint, but not everybody has that blueprint. Some people are dedicated to being politicians or CEOs or doctors or helping people in their community. It becomes a purpose, but we all are gifted with intuitive awareness. Yes.
I once had a psychic or an astrologer try to read my chart, and because I'm an adopted child and I don't know my exact time of birth, it was very difficult for them to really give me a reading. But she did have a pie chart, kind of, the only way I can describe it, a pie chart, and it was divided into sections, like it would be, say, from 12 o'clock in the afternoon till 12 o'clock at night. And the interesting part about it was, and we never got fully around to it, was that there was very little of these little pieces, these little logo things that were from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, there was a very few of them. But when it got to be about 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, they were all over the place. There was a lot of little symbols and stuff. And she didn't get into explain it too much, except she says from the early part of your life until you reach into your older years, she said your life is just going to be ho-hum and you'll just be making a living and that's about it. She says, but from like 8 o'clock on, and she said, we're obviously, I don't have the time to go into it with you, which we were on the radio. She said, your life is going to explode right before you. Things are going to just start happening. But she said, I can't give you a 100% proper reading because we don't know the exact time of your birth, you know, and we know the day, but we don't know what. So I always felt kind of cheated that I didn't know the exact time I was born, you know. But let's talk a little bit about before we get into your reading abilities and stuff. What was the reason that you wrote this book? What's next? Exploring the journey of souls in the afterlife. What prompted you to go ahead and write this wonderful book?
Well, it's really, I've been urged for several years now to come out with messages. I lived for 10 years. I lived as what I call a monk in the Santa Cruz Mountains for some reason, and I truly believe that the journey is part destiny. Mm-hmm. And when you look, you know, when you really look at yourself and you say, what am I doing and why, what is the reason for my being the way I am and where I am today, you get a notion of what you're meant to be doing. And I sat there, and I'm very sociable, and I could not, for heaven's sakes, understand why I had no social interaction. I was very much living in a monk status, and the only thing I could do day in, day out was basically to communicate with spirits, which I always did, but in that particular time of life, it was really intense. And so I really got grounded into communicating with earth spirits and you know, just truly communicating with people, souls in the afterlife, etc. Mm-hmm. And as I was doing that, I really reached out to have social interaction through doing radio shows. So I had my own radio show for 7 years, and people were asking me questions. And one of these fans of mine was calling me regularly, and one day said, Astrid, this person is asking what her mom or her parent is, where she is in the afterlife. She just passed away. Are there different places that we go to? What happens? And I started talking, and again, there was this urge of me thinking, oh my gosh, why am I only saying this to one person? I have such an urge to share these messages that come through me to multiple people. And I just told her, wow, boy, I could write a book about that. And she says, well, why don't you? And there you have it. You know, within 4 weeks, I had channeled the whole entire book, and that's what came. What's next?
Well, I know you can find this on www.brilliantessence.com if you visit your website. And thanks to Bruce Marin, who is your public relations director and a dear friend of mine from my days in Vegas, that's how you got to be with us here. And I do encourage you out there, everyone out there who has ever wondered about the afterlife, this answers an awful lot of the questions. And again, it's by Astrid Stromberg. What's next? Exploring the journey of souls in the afterlife. What are our greatest fears? Before we get into your psychic readings and what people ask you about the afterlife, but what are our fears about making that journey to the afterlife as just a normal person? I mean, I know there are people who believe in reincarnation. I know that there are people who believe in other aspects of dying and death. Some believe that once you're dead, you're dead. That's it. There's no place to go. There's no heaven. There's no hell. There's nothing. But what is the greatest fear that we have as humans about death? The fact that our life is over as we know it, and we don't understand the afterlife, or what is it that gives us the greatest fear, and how our faith can help us get over that fear?
I think one of the main things that I come across talking to people is not so much what comes next, as in how to stay connected, how to have the validation that our loved ones we still love and we still can communicate. They're still alive. They still have an identity, have a soul, have a recollection and a recognition of us and our love for them, and the desire for us to hug them and be with them and want to know that they're well, but also that we are, what's going on in our lives. Because as we live our lives, change is always happening, and we're always struggling with needing and requiring to be acknowledged, to be recognized, and to be loved, and to understand that those aspects of love never die. That's the thing I find that people need the most healing with, is to know and to have validated that those who have passed over are not only well, but are still with us, stay with us, and keep that love bond that we have, and stay in our loving presence. That's the most.
Yeah, you also have in your book that after a person passes, it's 3 days, I believe, in your book, before the soul finally reaches where it needs to go. But what happens to those souls that never reach heaven or that place where they're supposed to be? Those ghosts that are constantly wandering the earth in search of, because we hear the stories of battlefields where there's ghosts wandering around still, and haunted houses and things along those lines. But and believe me, I'm the first one to believe that when you're dead in a sense. But what happens to those souls that can't find their way to where they're going? What causes that?
Okay, so there's a couple of things here. The 3-day is through sheer experience. I have personally noticed, and it's also a kind of I won't call it a fact, but it's kind of a repetition that you find in scriptures, whether they be, Roman Catholic or Hindu or other scriptures, religious scriptures, of the fact that there is a timeline between the moment of death, where the body basically dies, and the moment where the soul transitions into another state of experience. It's that 3-day window that we experience on earth because we're in that timeline. For the souls on the other side, the timelines are very, very different. So that's my first remark. The second one is, as I described in the book, what I have been told by Spirit is that there is a letting go of physicality after death, which not only includes the body, where the body dies and the soul, or the soul consciousness recognizes that it is no longer in the human living form, but there's also a letting go of alignments to earth, alignments that include emotions, that include thought, that include all those aspects of human experiences that we know, that we recognize as our living entity on earth. Now, that means that even if your body, it's like cutting off a head of a chicken. The body continues to run. You cut off the head of a chicken, the body of the chicken continues to run. The mind slowly goes elsewhere. It slowly realizes that it no longer is in the body, and it transitions into another aspect of itself. Now, this is where it gets complicated, because there happens to be a soul connection with in the book, and I asked this because I was really interested in this. What is the soul? And I was explained that the soul, if you imagine the soul to be like those Russian dolls, we are the smallest in human, as a human, we're the smallest Russian doll. And above that small Russian doll, there's a higher self. There's a higher self. And then above that Russian doll, there's a higher self, and a higher self and a higher self. Like all those soul makeups go higher and higher, higher, until you get to the ultimate, biggest soul self aspect, which one, Spirit told me, which one would call, divine consciousness, God, universal mind, universal self, etc. But as a small entity of ourselves, when we let go of that little Russian doll aspect of ourselves, we get encompassed into our higher selves. Now, that higher self also has a mind. And it's really interesting because the Hindus talk about the higher mind of the higher self. And that higher mind has a big role in the blueprints of how the soul experiences its different lives, including as a human being, but also after letting go of that human soul self. Mm-hmm. So when you die, you have the higher self has a responsibility onto itself to say to itself, okay, am I who I am to be, who I want to be, who I recognize myself to be in the higher realms? If it does not, if it has gone through the blueprint of its soul self as a human aspect, and it has not agreed with itself that it can move on, then it's what we call karma. It has to go back and live or conclude or recognize that which it hasn't gone through, that it desired to go through. And that's where souls get stuck. They have not finished what they came to do. They have not finished their soul term with themselves. It's like self-judgment. And when they're in that space, they are continuously linked with alignments that can hold them down, especially if they've lived a lesser soul aspect of themselves than their higher self recognizes itself to be. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that leads me right into my next question. A lot of people who have talked about reincarnation in the past have said that sometimes you come back because you haven't learned all the lessons. Is that what the blueprint is all about? That maybe you haven't learned all the lessons that you need to learn in order to get to heaven and to be there on a permanent basis? Or is that...
you haven't done yourself justice. Yeah. I don't call it lessons because I have a problem with saying, we come to Earth to learn lessons. Some of us want to come to Earth to learn lessons. Mm-hmm. I personally don't think that everybody comes to Earth to learn lessons, Mm-hmm. I think it's, have you done yourself justice? Have you done your soul self justice? Are you as good onto yourself as you said you would be? And if you haven't been as good onto yourself and others as you said you would be, then you've got a problem with yourself, because you need to face yourself and look in the mirror and decide what you're going to do about it. You know, like I was reading this book, which is about I don't have it around me. It's the Lost Scriptures. It's all the scriptures that weren't that are said to be scriptures that weren't in the New or Old Testament, but there are writings in there where, especially I think it's Paul, who basically he channels, and he is shown by the angels the different places where lost souls go because they haven't been good enough onto themselves and others as they expect themselves to be. Like, some have been bad-mouthing, so they are lost in this dimension where they have to deal with the fact that they bad-mouthed, and they have to come to terms with that.
Mm-hmm.
When I was channeling for my book, it's a little like what I was shown, is that there is not one heaven, there is not one hell. There are multitudes of levels where you're attached to alignments, and depending on your alignment and how good you do unto yourself,
mm-hmm.
and to an extension onto others, then those are the alignments that you keep or you can let go of,
mm-hmm.
to go to higher places of self-exploration, self-development, and self-gratitude.
Mm-hmm. One person wanted me to ask this question of you the other day when they heard you were coming back on, and she's a twin. And she said, Gary, is there a way you can get this question in? Do twins have similar souls when it comes to who they are? Because, we hear twins wear the same clothes. And even if they were separated at birth through adoption, they have similar jobs, similar clothes, similar colors they like, similar husbands or wives. In death, are souls the same when it comes to twins?
Souls are always independent of one another. Again, to bring back, there's a Hindu saying that says, imagine that God, or all that is
mm-hmm.
a big, huge sun. It's like the sun, S-U-N. It's this beautiful big sun, and it's got all these rays. And this sun once said, "Oh, I am the sun. I am that I am, right? I'm a big, huge sun. Now let me explore what else I am and where else I can go." So it projected itself into rays, out into the unknown, outside of itself. Mm-hmm. So now it has like multiple rays going outside of itself. And we, as individual soul aspects of that, all that is, of that huge sun, we're at the point of those rays. And we're just at the very, very tip of one ray. You're at one tip of a ray, I'm at the tip of another ray, everybody is at the tip of another ray, and we see each other. We see each other as singular because we see each other as tips of rays. Mm-hmm. But we're all really, truly coming from the same oneness, from the same wholeness. Now, twins happen to be very, very closely aligned. They instead of me being from one ray to the east, coming from the east, and you being from one ray coming from the west, those twins are super close rays together. Like, their aspects are so close together that they relate to each other nearly as if they were one, but there's still those particular aspects that they individualize themselves with. They just happen to be super close rays. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they understand, if anybody out there understands each other better, it would be twins, because they have that super close alignment, and those aspects are so similar and sometimes so common to each other. Mm-hmm. That it's only the tip of the ray that differentiates one from another. Mm-hmm. But they're still independent. They're still independent souls.
One question that I asked you the last time, and I'm going to ask you again: if when we die, do we necessarily have to be reconnected with people from our lives on Earth that we really don't want to see?
Yeah. No.
I mean, there are, because I have this vision that your soul, whatever that entity is that goes to heaven at one point or another, everything is different. Everything is different when you get there. Yes, you're surrounded by other dead people or dead souls, I guess, or souls. But do you have to necessarily see Aunt Gwen or Uncle Bob, who you really didn't like growing up as a kid, or people you went to high school with, or any of this other stuff? I mean, is there a department where you can just say, no, I'd rather be around new people or people in my own profession that I was in on Earth. I don't want to see my high school chums or anything. That's past life, and I want to move on. Even in heaven, I want to move on. Do you have to be reconnected with all these people?
No, you don't. You don't have to. There's no forced passage to do that. There's a spirit that says unless you're in hell, but
I was married once. I
think that's what you told me last time too.
Yes.
But there is one thing, is that there will always be a part of yourself that will want to deal with that. There's always going to be a part of yourself that will, you'll always say to yourself, I got to deal with this before I can move on. I got to deal with this flat tire before I can ride my new car. You know what I mean? So it doesn't mean that it has to happen when you die, per se, but it will happen eventually. It's just a matter of how you choose for it to happen. Mm-hmm. And again, from a human perspective, because, I'm here and I'm going to go through, I believe that every moment of change is a moment of death. But ultimately, when we go through the death, there's always that moment where we want to be extensively elsewhere, extensively in a better place. And we're hoping that death, that ultimate death, gets us there. But what they keep on telling me, those guys that talk to me constantly, mm-hmm. is they keep telling me, you know what, you're going to want to face that no matter what, because it's always going to be in the back of your mind before you can let go of it and move on. And funnily enough, when I was a kid, I used to tell people, be very careful, because what you call karma is going to come and bite you in the ass, excuse mm-hmm. my French, before the time is up. Before, generationally, two generations, even one generation ago, it was you can reincarnate and deal with it through reincarnation. In mm-hmm. our generation, it's you're going to face it today because time has caught up with us.
Right.
And if we really look at how we experience our lives today, whatever we put out there is what we get back today. So, mm. I mean, look at OJ. Look at OJ. Okay, yeah. It's in this lifetime. It's not gonna wait. It's gonna happen in this lifetime. And if it mm-hmm. doesn't happen in this lifetime, those alignments are gonna stick a long time.
Right.
And this is where the death sentence hurts, because you don't want to wait until you die to get rid of the alignments you don't want in your own aura, right. in your own being.
Right. Right. When you speak to the spirits, and we're going to get into that now here just a little bit, your conversations with the spirits and the people that are talking to you from the other side, do they ever describe the journey from the moment that they have died? Because we often hear these stories. I don't know where they come from. I guess it's someone who's had a near-death experience and they come back and repeat it, but I'm sure you've heard it. Everyone out there in who's listening to us tonight on the Express has heard the stories of, I saw this great beam of light and I had a warm feeling all over and I felt as though God was reaching out and talking to me. Do the spirits ever talk to you about that journey, what it's like, and is it totally different than what we've been told by people who've had near-death experiences?
Yeah. Actually, I was surprised writing the book that they did it again numerous times in channeling for the book. Especially, I remember this one spirit that I asked, "What is it like? What is it like to experience death? Like, what do you let go of? How do you let go of your body?" And it was really interesting to have that spirit reenact the moment of death. You know, the closest thing that I found, and I swear to God, I channeled this before I ever saw, because I'm not a big sci-fi fan. I only got into it because one of my fans was interested in speaking to extraterrestrials. But there's this, I can't remember the name of the movie, but there's this moment in the movie where the woman loses her hand, and her hand kind of goes out into dust. And it's a sci-fi movie. I can't for the life of me remember what movie it is, but her hand kind of it's the one where she took a whole bunch of drugs. Like she had drugs in her stomach, and the pouch broke, and she had this huge experience, and she was in the airplane, and her hand kind of started to fade away into the surreal. Well, first of all, when you meditate and you go into a very deep, deep, deep trance, that's the feeling you get. You get the feeling that your body completely dissipates and becomes one with your surrounding. Secondly, you become aware of this aura field, which is outside of your body, which feels like plasma. It's the same feeling as what the fetus baby feels when it's in the fetus of a woman's womb. It's that elastic, very sticky substance. When you're in deep, deep trance, you're meditating in deep trance, you're out of your body, and you start feeling your other fields of energy outside of you. And the first one is to realize that you don't feel your arms, you don't feel your legs, you just feel a sense of encompassing the surroundings around you. And then the second step, deeper into trance, is that you feel this plasmic, sticky gooiness, which is another, which is like between a foot to 2.5 feet outside of your body energy field. And that is, spirits have told me, that's what you feel when you go out of your body, when you leave your body, when you die. That's the process. You get outside of your body and you start understanding that you're energetically linked to no matter anymore, but the auratic field that encompasses you. And that's when they start, and this is a very, very slow process, because some spirits just zap out and zoom off, But in the very slow motion film-like situation, this is what happens. And then it becomes a question of aligning yourself to what holds you down. We were talking about the 3 days when after death. What happens is that your spirit is still your soul spirit is still connected to earth alignments. So that's when the spirit is able to reconnect with people on earth, because it's still tied to earth element alignments. But after that, those earth alignments dissipate, and it becomes very detached. And so it takes much more energy from a soul on the other side to communicate with earth alignments and people on earth.
How did the spirits communicate with you? I mean, I know that you give readings, and people come to you and ask you all kinds of questions about their personal life, professional life, etc. But when Astrid is alone or driving in a car, how do the spirits come to you and talk to you without you prompting them?
Yeah, really. Sometimes I wish they didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
It depends. Okay, so there's two sides to me. There's the psychic side and there's the mediumship side. The mediumship side is what we're talking about, is talking to souls on the other side who have passed on, or talking to animal spirits or plant spirits. It's talking to souls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for that, it's very sensorial. When it comes to the psychic side, I align with what I call freeways of energy. Like, everything's energy. You imagine there's a person on the other side of the phone. I have a virtual freeway of energy between that person and me. Mm-hmm. It could start with a voice. It could start with a sensation. It could start with a flash in my mind. But it's like a freeway, and the energy and the information within that energy goes back and forth. And then all I have to do is follow that energy, get the information, and deliver the information. Mm-hmm. With being a medium, it's kind of the same thing, except I don't have someone on the other side. I don't have, a physical connection. I just have this non-physical connection. And I've been practicing all my life to understand what connections I have with people or with non-people. Like, when I hear something, I ask myself, is this me that's thinking, or does this come from outside of me? And if it comes from outside of me, does it come from my child on the other side of the house, and I'm telepathically communicating with him, or does it come from someone on the other side who's passed? Mm-hmm. When I see a ghost or a spirit, am I seeing a shadow? So it's non-intelligent, or am I sensing a form of intelligence? And if so, I've been practicing asking myself the question of, it's neurology to the utmost scientific experimental development I could think of, because I didn't want to go around with my mom saying, oh, you're just imagining this. I wanted to prove to her, no, I'm not imagining this. Sorry, it's not my mind. It's not, I'm not making this up. I'm really hearing. I'm really sensing. I'm really seeing.
Right. Right. When people come to you for a psychic reading, and by the way, how do they get a hold of you if anybody out there is interested in having a reading from you? How do they contact you?
Sure. They just have to go to the website, astridonair.com. That's the easiest way. Connect through me, or I hope that when we talked about this, Gary, one of these days we're going to do a radio show and people will be able to call in for a free mini reading.
Yes.
But otherwise, connect with me through one of my websites, and the fastest way is astridonair.com.
When people come to you, Astrid, and they want a reading, is it typical? Am I going to be happy? Am I going to meet the right person? Am I going to be wealthy? And believe me, having a lot of money doesn't necessarily make you happy. My life is proof of that. But what are some of the general things that people are looking for from you in readings? And are there times that you get a sense from somebody who wants a reading that they want it for all the wrong reasons? Have you come across that yet?
Yeah. I'm very blunt with my readings. Most of the readings that I do in private are mostly business, professional, and with that comes personal issues. Mm-hmm. A lot of the readings on air, when I go on air, they'll ask generalities because people don't like to, they just want to say, well, what's my love life, or what you see in my financial future, or very generalistic questions. Right. The thing is with me is that I hone into the core issue, and that's where it becomes more of a what you can do next to succeed.
Right.
And then there are the readings when I'm one-on-one with groups, when I'm actually active, speaking in front of an audience. I found a lot of people, they don't come up with this, but in the end, they need a lot of healing. And that's where I'm so glad to have pursued that holistic healing aspect of my gifts, because a lot of people need healing. And even if they come because they're interested in connecting with their past loved ones and making sure that they're okay and making sure that they're still loved, they also need that physical and spiritual healing. So it's I'm really happy to be able to help people in more dimensions than one, because I never wanted to be psychic with the sign on the road. That's really not me.
Right.
I've always been one to do a lot of volunteer work and help a lot of people, and I've got a very business and professional background that I believe in. I wanted to be level-headed, and so that helps me engage people to succeed in their lives, and then help them through that excuse, if you will, help them in a deeper way for a greater well-being in their personal life.
I'm sure you've come across people that you've done readings for where you saw things that were extremely unpleasant, and knowing you the way I do, I know you gave them the truth, but have there been situations where you just assumed, boy, I wish I had never read for that person because their future or whatever is going on in their life doesn't look very good right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better? How do you approach someone like that? Or you just come right out and say, look, this is what's going to happen. This is what you maybe need to do to avoid that. I mean, that's another part of my question. Yeah. If something negative is coming up in a reading, can you say, look, this doesn't have to be. If you take this course of action, you might be able to avoid the troubled times that are ahead?
Yeah, I honestly do not believe that there has to be heartache in anyone's life. I honestly believe that and I am always given potential to better be. I'm always given solutions. I'm very solution oriented. I always give homework. I always give to-dos. There's always positivity in my readings, no matter what. The only time I have a hard time reading people is when I have a feeling that, and I hate to say this and I will refuse to talk about it because it's not up to me to say, but the only time I have a hard time with my readings is when I know in advance, just by intuitively getting it, is that is that the person's going to cross over. And that's hard because I will never say it. I am not God. I do not take the place of God. I do not believe in knowing as a certitude, that a term is come. But I do have a sense of it. And like the last time I saw my dad. I mean, I knew that was going to be the last time I saw my dad, and I fought it. I didn't. I was 20 years old at that time. I hadn't practiced day in and day out my readings. It was ridiculous. I was a business developer in Paris, but it does happen. I do have a sense of the last time I will see or hear someone. However, when it happens and I'm reading that person also knows. That person also has a sense of her or his time coming, and even though we don't talk about it per se, the message is always about a better way to transition or a better way to deal with what needs to be dealt with that they want, reassurance on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's the only time when it becomes negative in my eyes. Now, on a very more superficial level, there are times when I know someone's lying, or I know they're faking it, or on an even more superficial level, like someone saying, "Oh, well, what do you see in my love life? I've, gone out with him 5 times. He's ditched me 5 times. Do you think we'll ever get together again?" And here I just have to be Astrid and say, you know what, don't be stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some people are only really consumed. How important is, like now I'm sort of becoming a student of Kabbalah, which is giving me an insight into myself that wasn't there before, and I'm always interested in finding out about me inside so I can try to be a better person and a better friend and all that that all goes with it. But how important is faith or religion, whatever your religious beliefs are, as far as in going back now into the afterlife and getting ready for either your own passing or someone else's passing? How important is faith in all of that?
That's a really, really good question. I believe that faith is of the utmost importance. I personally have a background, I was brought up as a Roman Catholic. Mother Mary is very, very, very tied to our family for multiple reasons, including apparitions and saving our ancestors in the war, things like that. The practice of faith is where it becomes discussable. I practice many variations of different religions. I mean, I've done the Ramadan. I learned the Kabbalah. I have read the Torah. I have read the Quran. I have read the Bible. I have practiced in other faiths that aren't called, monolithical religions, but the practice of your faith is what brings you to a greater understanding of yourself, a greater a strength of yourself. And the bottom line is, so long as you reach out to be the better of yourself, to be the best of yourself, it doesn't matter what faith or religion you practice. The practice is in being better, is in always doing better. But to have faith in yourself and to have faith in knowing that there is a greater self that you are a part of and that ultimately encompasses everything and anything you know about yourself and others, I think that's the big faith to keep in mind, and that helps those. Someone's talking about suicide, for example. In our religion, we have been taught to pray for those who commit suicide because their spirits can't help themselves. We were talking about ghosts and where people go in the afterlife that are lost. Well, those guys have lost their faith. Those guys haven't practiced to honor themselves in their greater aspects. And us, knowing that prayer works, knowing that we can uplift spirits and we can help souls go to a better place, even beyond death, is the practice of our faith that sustains us in a greater way.
One question that's in your book that I found fascinating is, do souls have fun in heaven?
Yes. I know, right? Isn't it crazy? I mean, some of them do the weirdest things. the nuns that I channeled. I don't remember if I put that in the book or not, but you remember the nuns? I channeled nuns, and they, when I was asking, do you what was it? Do you smoke, drink, and something else? You know, and these nuns came to me and they were explaining to me, well, yeah, of course we have fun in the afterlife, but those nuns were not, like I said before, there's several different spaces, several different places that souls go to, and these nuns were still very much linked to earthly beings, and especially souls that had just transitioned that were lost. So those nuns had a role in a plane where it was very much like us on Earth, and they still had those earthly pleasures, if you will, that they could associate themselves to, and they were taking great advantage of it. It was crazy.
I've just been notified by my producer that there's a tornado 30 miles from where he lives. So hang in there, folks. We only got another couple of minutes to go. And with that in mind, Astrid, let me just ask you one final question. What's next for you now? You've written this wonderful book. It's a bestseller. What's next for you? Another book? Your seminars, I know, are going well. What's happening with you now?
Oh my gosh! Well, yes, I'm touring around the USA, doing teaching people how to connect with their intuitive sides and connecting with their past loved ones and psychic development and all that. People keep asking me about the book, the next book, and I'm working on several options here. I'm working on a workbook, and I'm working on a follow-up of what's next. So we'll see where that goes. And I've got the radio show on AM station every Thursday. So
what station? Give it a plug. Give it a plug.
Okay, so it's AM 1180, I believe. You can find it on Astrid on Air. Click, it's live streaming. It's only 30 minutes, and people can call in to have a mini private reading. And those are very, very fast psychic. It's been mind blowing actually how fast they come, because I have instantaneous flashes on people's questions. So that's been fun. It's every Thursday, and you can find that on astridonair.com.
We've been talking to Astrid Stromberg, the author of What's Next? Exploring the Journey of Souls in the Afterlife. I recommend this book to all of you. Go to brilliantessence.com or to Astrid's website and get the book, please. This will answer a lot of your questions. And if you have any other questions, she'll probably be able to get a hold of her to ask those questions of her. And I want to thank her very much for taking the time out of her day to join us here on The Express. And Astrid, I will be calling you in just a little while as soon as we get off the air here. And thank you so much again. And would you please give Bruce my very best and tell him a car is on his way to him?
Will do. Yes, Bruce gives his love, and thank you for having me, Gary. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me. And tonight, of course, we're all going to say a long prayer that nothing happens to our good friend EW. EW, are you still with us?
Oh yeah, we're trying to make sure we know what's happening. There's a lot of people. Texas is under the gun right now.
Well, I would say something political, but I think I'll stay away from it at the moment.
Well,
but
we should do a political show one of these days. We should do one before the elections. See what comes up.
I'm going to be doing quite a bit of those.
Well,
Listen, for those of you,
keep people. If you guys do keep people in prayer, keep people praying up in Fort Worth. There's still a lot of people out of power from the storms that hit and the tornadoes that hit this morning, and they're getting hammered again right now.
So we will say prayers to everyone. Thank you again, Astrid. Thank you, everybody out there.
Thank you. God bless you all.
And if you want to get a hold of me, you can go to my Facebook page. It's Gary Allen, ALAN. Or if you want to listen to any of our past shows, go to youtube.com/Gary Allen The Express interviews. You can also hear the show being repeated on Thursday night on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com at 7 p.m. That's Renee's network, our sister station, and also progressivevoices.com. You can listen to any of my past shows. Thank you all very much for taking a few minutes out of your day. We'll be back next week. Thank you again. God bless. Good night. Take care of yourselves and each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.